I'm just getting a hot dog.
We're all getting hot dogs. What, do you think there's two lines and we're all in this line? You're the only genius that got in the other line?
Hey, shut up.
What do you want to hear?
No, I want all the hot dogs, please.
No, you don't have
I'm
to
buying
do that.
all the
I'm
hot
right
dogs.
here.
Come
No,
on,
you
lady.
don't have to do that.
That's
I'm
ridiculous.
right here.
have to do
I'm giving them to the good people.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today, we're going to be talking about the Chicago Dogs in the American Association, an independent team in the American Association. They've been around since 2018, a really fun brand. We're going to be speaking with two designers in this episode. We'll be speaking with Dan Price, who created the Dogs' primary brand, speaking with Kevin Gilsdorf, who created the Chicago Wieners logo. And then we'll be speaking with Chicago Dogs super fan Mike Trippi. And we will continue our Studio Simon Stumpers trivia questions at the end of this podcast. Right now, though, I'm very happy to be joined by Evan Gersonde, who is the director of sales with the Chicago Dogs. Evan, thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. So hopefully we'll have a good week here. Got a little snow over the weekend, so that's no fun. But hey, we'll take it. So
it's -5 right now in Fort Collins, Colorado. So it's
yeah. No, thank you. No, thank you.
I hear you.
We got the snow on the ground, and I think we're at about 10 degrees. So I'll take that, I guess.
Downright balmy. Yeah, not exactly baseball weather just yet, but I guess, in Chicago, as with Colorado, you're used to the cold weather, even when baseball season rolls around. It's a little bit chilly there, especially for the major league teams that start in April or sometimes late March. So let's start with that. Obviously, there are, Chicago is a major league baseball city. There are two major league teams there already. Most minor league teams play outside of the major metropolitan areas. When the Chicago Dogs were launched, what was the thinking there in launching a team in a major league city?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're blessed. We're actually in a village called Rosemont, which is probably about a half an hour west of the actual city proper, right next to O'Hare Airport. So, the thinking there is that we are far enough away from those actual city centers, and Rosemont. If you're not from Illinois, Rosemont has grown into an entertainment hub. This area is hotels, it's restaurants, it's one of the largest convention centers in the country. So it has become really an entertainment hotspot outside of downtown, right? So for those folks who don't want to go downtown, don't want to make that trek, it's a suburban downtown almost, and it was just a perfect partnership for us. It's a great location. The mayor had been wanting to bring baseball to this Rosemont area as kind of the cherry on top of his entertainment hub, and that's kind of we just found the perfect partnership here in Rosemont.
Well, I should tell you too that I have been to a game. I've been to one Chicago Dogs game. It was part of the 2018 Baseball Palooza road trip that I take with my my longtime college buddies, and it's a beautiful ballpark. It's a beautiful facility. The other 9 guys flew into O'Hare Airport. I was flying Southwest and flew to Midway, and so I had about an hour public transportation journey to get up to the ballpark. But it was great, right? Because right from O'Hare, you almost just basically walk across the street, and
Yes.
you're basically there. We had a few hours before the game, so we went to there was a sports bar there, and we hung out a little bit. And then one of the things most of the guys on the trip had never experienced was the game that we saw. This was the opening season. This was 2018 that we were there. And so the game that we saw was actually interrupted right at 9:00, like 9:00 on the nose, by a Pink Floyd laser show right in the middle of an inning. There was like 2 outs in the 7th inning or something. And so no one had ever seen a game actually stop for entertainment right in the middle of the game like that. So that was pretty funny. Not something you see at the affiliated levels for sure, or certainly not in the major leagues.
Yeah, it's a unique experience. I was probably on a Thursday, so like I was saying, this right across the street. It's this entertainment district, and they have a huge kind of swath of in between all these restaurants where on Thursdays they actually get cover bands to come in, and they get a couple thousand people as fans just coming to listen to these cover bands, hang out at these bars, and then they do fireworks on the nose at 9:30 every Thursday whether we're playing a game or not. So it's an interesting dynamic to really have that going on across the street, and then kind of have to time out our games, because we can't play through fireworks as cool as it is in the Sandlot. We can't play through fireworks. So sometimes we have to delay it, but most times we're done in time, and then our fans get to stick around and watch the fireworks.
Absolutely. Well, it was really fun, and it was a Thursday because it was the first day of Baseball Palooza, and that's the model for Baseball Palooza is Thursday through Sunday. So you're absolutely right. It was a Thursday. So this is a podcast about logos and nicknames and what they mean to the local community. Obviously, Chicago is famous. Well, it's famous for a lot of things, but one of the things that is unique to Chicago is the Chicago dog, the very unique style of Chicago hot dog. And so you have a primary brand and an often used alternate brand that are both based on hot dogs. One's the Chicago Dogs with your logo that's with the colors from the Chicago city flag and some of the elements of the Chicago city flag. And we'll talk to Dan Price about that coming up. And then you have obviously the Wieners, which is a very different kind of brand, very bright, very vibrant. And it's based more on, like the sort of hot dog vendor style of costume or uniform. So my question to you is, what does the Chicago hot dog mean to the city of Chicago?
It is the essence of Chicago, right? You hit on it. It's the depression dog, right? It's got the hot dog. It has everything on it. It is the essence of the city. And like you said, it is one of the things Chicago is known for, right? It's kind of your Chicago hot dog, Chicago style pizza, and Italian beef, right? So those are kind of your top three food items that Chicago is, known for. So the Chicago dog was just a natural thing because we wanted to be that community kind of baseball team, right? Like you said earlier, this city has 2 major league teams, a number of other minor league teams, and we wanted to be kind of that integrated team that both South Side and North Side baseball fans could root for. So what was better than kind of the symbol of the city with the Chicago dog?
So the brand itself, I mean, really ties to the city of Chicago. And you mentioned that, Rosemont's a little bit outside the city, but, specifically tying to the colors of the city flag. There was really a very strong attempt to tie this brand to the city of Chicago, which, is something I'm a huge fan of because I think that's what minor league baseball branding should be doing, is it should be about the local communities. But, it's the Chicago dog is obviously an important part of Chicago culture, but then the city flag is, incorporated into this brand. Is the flag itself, I live in Colorado and the flag is everywhere. It's on dog collars, it's on beer cans, it's on t-shirts. Every time you run a 5K here, you're guaranteed to have that Colorado C on it. Is the Chicago city flag like prevalent there? Do people recognize it right away?
Absolutely. I grew up in Wisconsin, right? So this whole kind of thing of having a city flag, it was completely new to me. It was completely foreign, but this Chicago flag, it is everywhere. People have the American flag, the Illinois flag, the Chicago flag. So it is known everywhere. Those 4 stars across the middle is just it's iconic. And like you said, it is something that people recognize wherever it is. Playing off that logo, just with the colors and the branding and the Chicago dog all together, it's just kind of seamless. Like you mentioned, with the colors in it and the 4 stars and the colors themselves, they just give us so much opportunity. I mean, not only on our jerseys, but for branding, for t-shirts, for limited edition shirts, things like that, because there's always so much to play off of that Chicago flag, because to your point, it's everywhere. You're getting it all the time. There's stickers on laptops, right? There's stickers on water bottles. It's on hats. It's on shirts. It's all over the place.
Little did we know that we would be getting into the vexillology of the Chicago city flag here. It's
right.
This is so you all have, this very sophisticated brand, in the world of minor league baseball, there's a lot of wackiness out there. The primary brand for the dogs is very sophisticated. It's very clean, and it's, and it's not, there's no real element of cartoonishness to it, except on Wiener Wednesdays, when you all play as the Chicago Wieners, and you have this very different brand that we'll speak with Kevin Gilsdorf later in this episode about. What was the thinking in having these two really disparate brands representing the team?
Yeah, it's something our owner Sean Hunter always goes back to. It's being a little bit incongruous, right? It's just goofy. It's funny. It's the Chicago Wieners. It's a goofy name. It allowed us to kind of create this Wednesday atmosphere that we have become the Chicago Wieners, right? At the ballpark, we do dollar hot dogs. So it's just fun and it's different, and it's that kind of branding. The players love it, right? They love to wear that jersey even on the road when it's not Wednesday, right? It's just bright and it's goofy, and it's got kind of, just, if you've ever seen it, I mean, it's got all of the ingredients right on there. It is it's a good logo. It's a great logo. Gilsdorf did a great job with it. It's just it's different. Like I mentioned, it's different, and having two identities is it's kind of cool. And at this point, going into year 6, people are recognizing that. Year 1, year 2, people are like, wait, I thought you were the Chicago Dogs. Are you the Wieners? Or like, what's the team name here? So
Yeah.
Going through that, it was a unique experience, just having both brands coming through and being a brand new team at that point. But now people kind of see that wackiness and that goofiness, and they see it when they come to games. So it just makes sense to kind of have those two different identities, if you will.
So I grew up in the Philadelphia area. We obviously have strong feelings about sandwiches. The Philadelphia cheesesteak is iconic. I have said before, though, I spent a week in Chicago years ago, really loved it. Beautiful city. I've been telling people since that visit that the best sandwich outside of Philadelphia is the Italian beef. Love the Italian beef. The hot dog elicits a lot of these sort of culture war questions, right? And I'm not going to ask you if it's a sandwich, and there's the whole notion of, is it a sandwich? There's, what do you put on it, right? This whole question of mustard versus ketchup, and you guys, you really bought into this, right? With your mascots, I remember, in 2018 when we were there, the ketchup and the mustard mascots. What was the thinking in sort of doubling down on that, question of, do you put ketchup on a hot dog?
Definitely. So I will say on record, it is not a sandwich. We've had this debate thousands of times. So it is not a sandwich, but going with, the mascots, ketchup and Squeeze. Squeeze is, the lovable, every mascot, he's fluffy, he's fun, he does his dance moves, whatever it may be. So that was a no-brainer, but bringing in ketchup as kind of the anti-hero, if you will, just plays into Chicago so much more, right? It just goes hand in hand with the logo, just no ketchup. Anybody who's from Chicago knows that is a rule. Like I said earlier, I grew up in Wisconsin. I grew up eating, whether it was ketchup and onions or ketchup and mustard on hot dogs. I learned very quickly that ketchup is not allowed to go on a hot dog around here. So that's kind of why we integrated the ketchup mascot, is just kind of that anti-hero, that villain who's, still a nice guy, but maybe shouldn't be around all the time.
I was going to ask you if you had developed strong feelings, not being a Chicago native, but, being, immigrating there from Wisconsin. We just don't have that in Colorado. We don't have the strong arguments about food things, right? It's just not part of we have a lot of beer arguments, I guess, out here, the IPA versus non-IPA, and then there's the whole question of Rocky Mountain oysters, but we don't have the food culture wars out here like we do in Philadelphia or in Chicago, right? In Philadelphia, there's no right or wrong answer, right? If you want onions or if you don't want onions, however you want to do it, or if you want, Whiz versus provolone, it's just, that although you don't put Swiss cheese on it, right? There's some things you just don't do. So I understand
things that's just a line too far.
Absolutely. Some things are sacrosanct there. So you've been around since 2018, which in minor league baseball terms is a pretty good amount of time. You're firmly entrenched in the community. Do people think of Chicago now as a 3-team city?
We're still getting there. So many times people are, right? Our brand recognition has skyrocketed. One of the biggest things, we actually played in 2020 through COVID. It was a very shortened season and to a very small crowd, but masks, social distancing, splitting the concourse, things like that. But that skyrocketed our brand awareness, just because we were the only team in Chicago to have live fans. So just people who needed to get out, people who saw that there was a live sporting event going on, came out to our ballpark and they experienced us for the first time. So much of our brand recognition came out of COVID, and it just skyrocketed, and it keeps going up and up and up. But there's always that opportunity. Living in Chicago, there's so many people here. So many people drive past our ballpark on the tollway and still have no idea who we are. We can be talking about people who say, "Hey, I work for the Chicago Dogs up in Rosemont." And they're like, "Oh, is that ballpark that's right off the 294? I drive past that, every day, but I've never been inside." So there's still so much opportunity in this area, just of people still recognizing and realizing who we are. So to answer your question, yes, people know the Chicago Dogs, but there's still so much work to be done.
So before I let you go here, I'm going to ask you a question that's of deep personal importance. And so this is, purely selfish of me to ask this question here. I have out behind me here, I have a collection of ice cream helmets, about 430 at the time of this recording, about 430 helmets. I do have two from the Dogs. One that I got there when I was at the game. I got the red one when I was at the game. And then, in the course of being a collector, I ended up trading for one of the light blue ones. And so now I've got the red one and I've got the blue one. It feels like the time has come that the Wieners brand is entrenched enough in the brand of the Chicago Dogs at large. Does the potential exist for a yellow Chicago Wieners helmet Sunday?
I think it does exist. I think that potential is there. And like you said, that brand has grown enough that people would appreciate that. Something I will hit on, I should have mentioned this along with our mascots, but we actually have what we call the rally pickle. So we've kind of introduced a third mascot, who is a pickle. Once again, another topping on a Chicago Dog, but he's supposed to be there. So he's our rally pickle. He comes out, but pickle has been a fan favorite. And I think that pickle is almost more recognizable than the Wieners logo at this point, just because he comes out, if we're down and we need a rally. Obviously we have a promotion that we borrowed from the Braves, race the pickle. Can you race him and beat him in a race there? So I think pickle and the Wieners are both opportunities, not only for maybe Sunday helmets, but other promotional things or other merchandising things. I think those are two great opportunities that we still have.
Well, I feel like I'm tapping into your area of expertise here on the team in particular. So I will be standing by awaiting news on the rally pickle helmet or the Wieners helmet. There's not a lot of yellow helmets out there, right? Like
there's really not. And that's another piece of the uniqueness. It's a bright yellow. How many teams can you name that play in bright yellow? I mean, obviously the Bananas, things like that. But but yeah, it's a completely different brand, and people have embraced it.
Awesome. Evan, this has been a lot of fun. The Chicago Dogs, I know people can find the Chicago Dogs pretty easily on social media. Are you on social media yourself?
Not too much on. I mean, I have a Twitter and a Facebook, but LinkedIn, feel free to connect with me on there. My Twitter and Facebook are quite dormant, so that would be no fun. But LinkedIn would be the best way to connect with me.
Okay. And of course, the Chicago Dogs, you can find the Chicago Dogs online just by searching them and on all the social media outlets. Evan, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much. And I hope to get out to another game on a Thursday, so maybe I can see a 9 p.m. Pink Floyd laser show in the middle of the seventh inning again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you taking the time to chat.
All right. Thanks, Evan. Take care.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Very happy right now to be joined by Dan Price with Adrenalin Sports Marketing. Dan created the original brand, the brand that still exists to this day for the Chicago Dogs, their primary mark. Dan, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You escaped Colorado right before this storm. I understand you're based in Texas now, but when you created the brand for the Chicago Dogs, you were based in Denver. How did you get involved with creating the primary brand for a minor league baseball team in Chicago?
So I have a deep history with the owner of the team, Sean Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean and I worked together during my days at the Denver Nuggets. He was the president of the team, and he and I actually went through the development of the Colorado Avalanche logo together. So he left and went to a few other teams. And when he decided to buy his own baseball team, he said, you know what, would you like to get back together and let's have some fun and let's do a mark that will be very unique. And he said, that's all I'm asking you to do, is something that's very unique and different from a lot of other logos in minor league baseball. So he set me up with the challenge and we worked together on it for, I guess, a few months.
So when he came to you with, we're going to create this brand for this team, he didn't come to you with, hey, the Chicago city flag colors are such and such. And, you know, he didn't have a list of, specifics in the design brief. It was just, hey, create a cool brand for a minor league baseball team.
It was create a cool brand for a minor league baseball team. And we worked on it and wanted to kind of keep some of the standards out, with the caricatures and the bat in the hand and a lot of things that are very successful for other teams. But he just stressed that he wanted something different. And we knew what the name was, of course, but just thought we'd have some fun with it with the state colors and had the stars come on as almost, the elements of spice for the dog itself. And at the end, it was successful. I think it was what he was looking for. There was a lot of iterations coming up to this final round, of course, but I think from the beginning, he felt like we had achieved the goal of doing something a little more unique.
Well, it certainly stands out in minor league baseball because it is, it could have been very silly, right? It could have been, it could have been a cartoon dog. It could have been a cartoon anthropomorphized hot dog. And you went with this, I think what designers refer to as flat design, right? Like it was just solid colors, relatively simple shapes, to a warm color and a cool color. So really, sort of very simple, but really effective design choices that are contrary to a lot of what you see in minor league baseball right now. Like
Absolutely.
you say, works well for a lot of other teams, but for this team, this seemed to really work well. How'd you know that was going to work well for this team?
Well, what's interesting is through my history of doing logos, I kind of stuck to my roots, and it was always this balance of positives and negatives working against each other or with each other more appropriately, and trying to create as little line art as possible and letting the shapes really carry the design. So I have always worked on marks that were very flat, 2-color, 3-color. And even during the days, in the 90s when everybody was figuring out their computers and we were going to 3D logos and the NBA was going through a lot of changes and Wrigley's was going through changes and everybody was adding more like pillowing and shadowing and all these things to their marks. I remember those days at Adrenalin and realizing that there's just some projects we're not going to get because that's not our style. Because I still believe a logo should be the simplest element you can come down to that really describes the product. And I don't know, when Sean asked me to work on this, if he knew all that was spinning around in my head, but I knew that I wanted a logo that was sophisticated but fun and not too off the cartoon, style. And we had done another logo for a minor league baseball team in Fort Collins. Maybe you're familiar with them, but the Fort Collins Foxes.
You guys did the Foxes?
We did the Foxes logo.
I got to get you back on the horn to talk about the Foxes.
Yeah.
I am about a half a mile away from where the Foxes play in City Park. I really enjoy that logo. It's really a fun logo.
That logo has stood the test of time for minor league sports. It has been around for 18 years, maybe. I talked to the team owner the other day, and the one thing he said was, I'm so glad I came to an agency. He said, I'm glad I chose that route instead of just having my nephew or somebody else do the mark, because it really did add some value. So yeah, when Sean came, he made me a little nervous at first when he said, I want to do something that's different from anything you've done before. So that was challenging because I'm thinking, okay, he knows what I do. He knows my style, but he's challenging me to do something that I've never done before. And I don't feel like I got outside of my comfort on this mark. I stayed in my form, but he was pleased with the results. And what you're addressing is probably what made it unique, is that it wasn't too cartoony. It was a hot dog, but it's almost it's like a much more sophisticated hot dog than maybe a lot of people would have envisioned when they heard the name.
Well, and tapping into the color palette that you tapped into, that very light blue, the sort of sky blue of the Chicago city flag, and the red, the cool colors are receding, the warm colors advancing. I mean, there's a lot of tried and true graphic design principles in creating solid logos here.
When you're working on marks, sometimes you have the advantage of going with what are considered obvious colors. We just finished a logo for USA Archery,
Okay.
and done a few logos in the national governing body space, and it's pretty obvious you're going to do something with red, white, and blue. But in this case, we wanted something, as in the case of a lot of logos, the more you can connect it to the city, or the more you can connect it to the region, the more the region feels ownership of the mark. And that's very obvious when you look at, the Miami Dolphins. I mean, Denver would never use those colors, but they make such sense in Miami. So if you can build that brand around this idea that even without the logo, there's other things within the palette of the brand that give it, credit and credibility. But the reason they work well together, to your point, is because we always design in black and white first. And I think a lot of people have gotten away from that because computers allow you to just get very creative and try a lot of different things. But if you do a logo in black and white, and I'm just giving a little lesson here for anybody that wants to take it, it's always going to work.
Yeah.
It's always going to work. If you do a logo in all color, try to convert it back to black and white. Sometimes it doesn't work.
That is, first of all, we always appreciate design lessons here. This is one of the reasons I do this podcast is my background's in graphic design. Logo design in particular feels like magic to me. I've said that on the podcast before because, like you say, it has to be simple and it has to represent an entire organization, and in the case of sports teams, an entire area, entire fan base. And, and then for people like me, I'm not from Chicago. I'm a baseball fan. I've been to a Dogs game. I got t-shirts and caps because I like the logo, right? And so, creating something as simple as possible that appeals, that represents an entire organization, stands for a whole area, a whole fan base, and then can have appeal outside of that fan base to, the baseball fans and visitors in general.
Right.
That's a huge accomplishment, and it's a huge task.
And I've had that conversation with people when they come to and they want a whole lot in their logo. Yeah. And I say, let's save that for the t-shirt art, but let's do a logo. Yeah. Because sometimes people do cross that path and they cross over to where the logo gets so busy from a distance, it looks more like a bug on a windshield. It's just, you can't make out anything. So,
well, I have to say it's, for independent minor league baseball, this logo has really stood out, I think, on a national level. I think it's gotten a lot of appreciation on the minor league baseball Twitter community that I'm a part of, that you see people talking about logos all the time, and anything with this branding on it is really well received. I think the simplicity of the design, the simplicity of the color choices, juxtaposed with, their goofy hot dog and mustard character.
Absolutely. The good and the bad, and they've embraced it so well. And Sean was telling me the other day, the team owner, that the fans have really embraced the entire narrative, with the mascots and the different promotions that they do. It's all wrapped around the name, and it's just, everything is an extension of it.
Yeah.
So everything that they do has purpose.
Well, let me ask you this from your own personal, you're not representing the team or your design firm or anything here. I'm just asking you for your own personal perspective. You're at a cookout, they're serving hot dogs. They hand you a bun with a dog in it. What do you put on it?
I would put on some onions and some mustard.
Okay. No ketchup. You're sticking with the narrative there. I like it.
I got to be honest. I've never enjoyed ketchup on a hot dog. I don't know what it is, but it's always just been mustard. And if I can find a good mustard, I'll try that too. But sometimes I find it's just good old yellow mustard.
Dan, this has been a ton of fun. Really enjoyed talking about this Dogs logo. Your Adrenalin Sports Marketing, and I know now is a subdivision of Real Fig Advertising and Marketing, and you're based in Texas. Where can people find you, Adrenalin, Real Fig? Where could you find those online? Where can people find the work that you're doing?
So you can find Real Fig Advertising and Marketing at figadvertising.com. And that's where you'll find my bio. You can also find me on LinkedIn And I do carry a Instagram account that is Dart Art Texas.
Well, we'll put that in the show notes. Dan, thanks so much. This has been a ton of fun, and I will absolutely get back in touch with you, and we will talk about the foxes for an episode coming up soon.
I look forward to that, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's a fun topic, and you must have, with the number of minor league baseball teams out there, your job will never end, because the logos are always changing and they're always popping up. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that. This project will keep me busy for a long time.
all right.
So thanks for that. Take care, Dan. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everyone, welcome back. This is a special treat for me on this episode. We get to talk to two designers in one episode, and you know how much I love to nerd out on graphic design. And so I'm very happy to be talking with Kevin Gilsdorf, who is the founder of Kindle Point, which is a design firm based out of Chicago. Kindle Point and Kevin are responsible for the Chicago Wieners alternate brand that the dogs trot out. Very different brand from the dog's primary brand, which is, the sort of subdued colors from the Chicago flag. This is a very bright and if the dog's primary brand can be designed as flat design, the Wieners brand is very much not flat design. It is really dynamic in a lot of ways. So Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is really a treat.
Well, it's fun for me to talk about this brand. I mean, I love talking about minor league baseball. The Wieners brand that you created, the Kindle Point, doesn't just work in minor league baseball. You do all sorts of branding for all sorts of clients. How did you get involved with creating an alternate brand for a minor league baseball team?
Yeah, I mean, I do branding for, corporations, a lot of social impact brands. But I actually started my career in baseball, working for another team, the King County Cougars.
Oh.
And then eventually the ownership bought the Nashville Sounds. So I have a little baseball in my history, and contacts, obviously, that introduced me to the effort that was happening in Rosemont with the Chicago Dogs.
So the Wieners brand that you created, obviously, I'm sure you were given the directive in terms of the design brief here. Create something that is very different from our primary brand. The yellow, the green, the red. What was your thinking in creating the Wieners brand?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of inputs as part of the creative brief. Obviously, the team was new to Chicago. They had built some relationships, just in terms of sponsorships and partnerships with Vienna Beef, which is the famous, base of a Chicago dog, and also the Wiener Circle, which is a very famous hot dog stand in Chicago, with a very historic past in the city. And so with those partnerships, the team really wanted to adhere to and celebrate the Chicago dog in its most pure form, and really looked at it as an opportunity to the main directive was, how do we make the team look like a group of hot dog vendors? And so I loved that idea, and I like to start research as a part of any design project, and it was just really interesting, especially with Vienna Beef, to look at all the signage that included either illustrated hot dogs or photographed hot dogs that were, built to the nines in terms of, all the ingredients being on there, and, always ended up being sort of a mouth-watering experience. And I thought, okay, well, how do we pull those semiotics into this project and really bring it to life in a way that people, want to have fun with the logo, want to wear the logo as a source of pride, just, living in Chicago and celebrating the Chicago dog. And that's kind of the basis of where it all started.
It seems like it would have been really easy in this brand to create just an anthropomorphic hot dog character. And in my memory, actually, when I started thinking about this brand, that actually is what it was in my head when I was thinking of this much more dynamic brand for the Wieners than the dogs. When I went back to look at the brand before this conversation, it was not that, right? It is a very energetic illustration of a hot dog that really conveys, like you're talking about, this very specific thing that is the Chicago dog. Were you inclined when you first started the project to make it a character, or was it always going to be, we're going to celebrate this hot dog and we're going to create the best illustration of a Chicago dog?
Yeah, it didn't start that way, although there was a small campaign where we characterized the ingredients of Chicago dog all the way down to the onions and the celery salt. So that what you're thinking about actually, is sort of an effort in more of a campaign graphic approach. But no, with this, I mean, it was surprisingly there were the curve of the dog related very closely to the official dog's logo. If you look at the ends, there's sort of a star shape. So we wanted to tap into the original logo, but it really was, how do we celebrate, this hot dog, this experience of the Chicago dog, and everything it means to Chicago, and pull that into this experience. So, the twist on it was really making the baseball itself part of the ingredients, nestled between the two tomatoes kind of at the top. And that was sort of the unexpected, we're talking about not just a hot dog but a baseball team here.
Well, let me ask you about the ingredients that are in this here, because I'm originally from the Philadelphia area, and we have our own culture of sandwich snobbery here. And so we have a very specific sandwich culture in Philadelphia. I'm looking at the Wieners brand right now. So you had the Vienna sausage. We'll start with that. You have the Vienna sausage here with mustard, and only mustard on it.
Only mustard.
Exactly. You have, it looks like celery salt, right? Like green and white diamond shapes on the dog itself. Is that celery salt?
Yeah, we had a little bit of mix of, we wanted to keep this simplification. So celery salt is typically not visible on Chicago dog, even though it's there. So kind of a combination of onion, as well as the celery salt for the white squares, and then the relish green squares. The mustard is a have to. In fact, if you look at the Chicago dog's jersey, we had to create a bunch of different graphics. So we actually used the onions and the relish as sort of a pattern that made it look a little bit more athletic and a little bit more motion based on the sides of the jersey. But then we also planted this no ketchup typography, and we made the zero in no, or the O in no, sort of a slash of ketchup. So the ketchup mustard only thing in Chicago is a very big deal. In fact, sometimes we give out-of-towners too hard of a time for ketchup on their hot dogs.
The celery salt, relish, onion pattern on the side of the Wieners jersey, it kind of evokes when the Diamondbacks tried to do that sort of pattern, the sort of scale pattern on the sides of their jerseys. Definitely a certain amount of movement. This is green and yellow rather than their charcoal gray and maroon that they were doing. To get back to the list of ingredients here, because this is to me, the sandwich is a huge part of this. Oh, can I say that? Is it a sandwich? I'm sure you're sick of that question. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
That debate rages on, right?
I don't want to put you on the spot here.
Yeah, no. So I believe the invention of it was, during the Depression, and sort of this, opportunity to invent something. And so, it became, out of any period of difficulty, I think there's a lot of invention, right? So they did for a time call it the Depression sandwich. And then when Vienna Beef brought out this idea or this recipe more or less for the Chicago dog, it just really took off because the flavors, there's just so many flavors in it, but it all works together. So, I mean, back to the ingredients, we forgot the dill pickle, the sport peppers, the tomatoes, and the bun actually generally has to be poppy seed. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you could call it a sandwich.
Okay.
There's a lot to it.
You mentioned the pickle. It's obviously a pickle spear. It's not just pickle slices. That's an important part of the Chicago dog. It's pickle spear.
And it's dill, The
Dill
dill pickle
pickle.
spear, because
Yeah,
the relish handles the sweet pickle lovers.
I kind of reject the whole notion of the bread and butter pickle anyway. It's almost not even a pickle to me. And maybe that's a separate debate, I guess.
Yeah.
The poppy seeds on the bun are very much coming through here. You've got a couple of tomato wedges. Did you call them sport peppers?
Yes.
Sport
Yeah.
peppers. I've
Sport.
never heard that term before. That's a new one to me. So
Yeah.
I would have just looking at the logo and with my limited understanding of what a Chicago dog actually is. I've had them before, but it was one of those things where it was handed to me and I ate it and I didn't really catalog the ingredients. Is a sport pepper different from like a pepperoncini? Is it something like that?
Yeah, it's a little different. It's a smoother, smaller pepper. And again, back to Vienna beef, they actually package bottles of them. Other brands do as well. But yeah, if you want the authentic one, Vienna beef does a nice job of making them available at your local store, so you can experiment.
A sport pepper. Okay, this is I am so thrilled to learn of the existence of a thing called the sport pepper. And then obviously you mentioned there's the tomato wedges, and then there's actually a baseball that ties it all back to the team. As I'm sitting here staring at this, and we've been talking about this and staring at it, I'm seeing a face. Is that intentional? That's not intentional, is it? That that the tomatoes are the eyes and the baseball's a nose and the hot dog and the bun and the pickle are a smile?
I think, as designers, especially in sports and in entertainment, I think in general, we try to create these layers of meaning. And yeah, I mean, I think when we started to put it together and that face, materialized, it was definitely a process thing of sort of getting to a spot where, oh, okay, so that adds to the happiness of the logo. It adds to sort of the takeaway. Those are the things that, if you're not a designer, you probably only recognize it in your subconscious, but as a designer, you're thinking, okay, this is another added level of meaning that we can work into an image like this.
I'm very happy to know that face is intentional, because I was sitting there staring at it and I'm thinking, am I seeing things, or is that, I mean, it really looks like a smiling, almost like a smiling clown face. There's a big smile and the tomatoes look like eyes, and even the sport peppers look like like face paint underneath an athlete's eyes, right? The way they're positioned there. That is a really fun layer to this logo that honestly I don't think that I had noticed that before.
It's always interesting to hear people pick up on those details, because logo design for me has changed. Obviously, it used to be a sign off to sit, sort of look at whatever the brand as a whole is communicating. Okay, this is by us. But I feel like that has completely changed, and now it's the beginning of the story. It sort of brings people into what's the spirit of the brand, what are the communication points that the brand's really adhering to. And obviously, when I met with Sean Hunter at first, I asked him, what are the things that bring you into this sport and into this team as an owner? What propels you, or what's your passion behind that? And he said, I want to bring smiles to the fans. And I thought, okay, there's your smile.
Literally
a
smile in the logo. Kevin, this has been a ton of fun. Is there anything about the logo that I'm not asking about that is important as sort of part of the process, or what you brought to the table, as it were, for this brand?
I think the history of the Chicago dog was such a critical component. I think the team was had a lot of foresight in terms of naming the team the Chicago Dogs at first, but even taking this turn and saying, okay, we have this opportunity from a promotional standpoint to introduce this really authentic hot dog vendor look. And from that, this logo was meant to do that. So it's not just a logo for the team. It's kind of a celebration, I think, of the Chicago area, and obviously this Chicago delicacy. Playing that into the baseball spirit, I think, is a really wise move.
think those are the best minor league baseball brands, the one that celebrate the whole community and are emblematic of not just a baseball team, but the place at large. And so this definitely captures that in a really fun way. And I really enjoyed this conversation because I learned a lot, and now it's only 8:30 in the morning here in Colorado as I'm talking, and I kind of want to go make myself a Chicago dog. I even have the celery salt in the spice shelf there, so I might have to see if I can't assemble something approximating that. Kevin, where can people find you and Kindle Point on social media and online?
Kindlepoint.com or Kevin Gilsdorf at Kevin Gilsdorf on LinkedIn as well as Instagram.
Fantastic, and those will be in the show notes. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Super happy right now to be joined by, I think you could only describe Mike Trippi as the Chicago Dogs' biggest fan. Super fan Mike Trippi. Mike goes as Chai Dog Fool on Twitter and tweets a lot about the dogs and their gear and their team and their brand. And so I thought it was only appropriate to bring Mike on, talk about the Chicago Dogs. Mike, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Paul. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. You and I have been following each other on Twitter for a long time, so I am aware of your fandom. How did you become the biggest Chicago Dogs fan?
I don't know that I'm the biggest, but I'm certainly very active in it. The quick story is my very first game was actually at the end of season 2. I literally would drive by every day on my way to work. We worked in the city, so I would drive by the stadium every day, and I said, one of these days I got to go see that hot dog team before they fold and go away. And my first game, it was literally the last week of the season, and I got front row seats right behind home plate and instantly fell in love, and that was it. I went back 2 days later, and then the very next day I got season tickets, and something clicked. Something snapped in my brain, and I went, I've got to be here.
So I've said this before about minor league baseball, that it's less about the outcome of the game. It's more about, the fan experience. It's about just, going to the ballpark, having a hot dog, having a helmet sundae. And, Eric Profit of the Earned Fun Average admonishes me for this when I say that nobody at a minor league baseball game really cares about the outcome of the game, right? Eric is a big Wichita Wind Surge fan. He cares about how the Wind Surge do. But as a Chicago Dogs super fan, do you care about the outcome? Is it the, you're a fan of the team and you want them to succeed and you want them to win the championship and that would be a culminating moment? Or is it about the fan experience?
It's both. I love the team. I want them to win. I root so hard for the team. I go above and beyond on my rooting, and they're a great team. Every year they've just been getting better and better since I've been following them. And we were in 2021, their first time we made the playoffs, we were basically a double play away from getting to the finals. And that was heartbreaking. And this year again, so close, but this team is,
you want them to win.
Yeah, I want them to win. But I again, you're right. I love being a fan and walking around the park and mixing with all the other super fans. There's so many of us. I've made so many friends that we see each other every game. There's Lori, the hot dog lady. She always wears her hot dog uniform, and now we all carry our flags. That was the one thing. I started waving the flag, and everybody else started bringing flags. This year I brought a drum. I play drums, so I brought one of my drums and started banging on the drum. I bring crazy lights. I just do so many fun things to make it fun for me, but also to maybe get other fans into it, super fanning it up, I guess.
Absolutely. So you've had a couple of signature experiences as a Dogs fan. You got to throw out the first pitch at a very important Dogs game. Can you tell me how that came about?
Sure. This was in the 2021 season, and we had made the playoffs for the first time ever in the franchise. And Sean Hunter and Trish Zero, the owner and the CFO, they invited me to throw out the very first pitch for the very first home playoff game, and I was so honored. I hadn't, no idea it was coming. And I remember practicing in my backyard. I set up a chair 60 feet 6 inches.
So
And,
was it because you're a season ticket holder, because you're so prominent at the games? Or
I think so.
Yeah.
Earlier that season, that's when I started waving the flag. I would bring the flag to all the games, and Sean Hunter, the owner, he's always on the concourse, always around. So he always sees me, hey Mike, and all the fans, all the fans know him, and he knows all the fans.
Sure.
And I think it was just a case of, man, that kid's really, he's really into us. Let's give him this.
So the important follow-up question here: how'd you do? Did you bounce it?
No.
Nice.
I got it. Yeah.
High and away? Was it just right down the pipe? How'd you? Yeah. What was
a little bit of an arc.
Okay. Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
I wanted to go. I didn't want to try and throw a strike. I just wanted to get it across.
Get it there. Absolutely. So this is, it's a podcast about graphic design as it pertains to minor league baseball. You have won some design competitions or some design contests. You've had fan designs selected for T-shirts that have been produced by the dogs. How did you pull that off?
Well, I just persistence, I guess, and there really was no contest. It's just a case of I'm a graphic designer, B, I'm a dogs fan nut. So I combined the two, and I said, hey, this would be a good idea for a shirt. And I submitted so many designs. Again, Trish was nice enough to give me some time to present. Hey, I got all these ideas, that kind of thing.
This was not a fan contest. This was
no, not at all. No, they didn't have
a
fan. I just submitted some stuff. I showed, hey Trish, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And she's like, oh, that's kind of nice, So
amazing.
And again, I hopefully I'm not speaking for Trish. It just kind of organically happened,
Sure.
And just recently, there's my third design was chosen.
So, as a graphic designer professionally, I mean, the dogs are interesting because they have two very distinctive brands. You are very much right now decked out in the primary brand with the the Chicago flag based color scheme. And then obviously they have the Wieners brand. We've talked to both of the designers of those logos for this episode already. As a designer, do you have a preference? I mean, obviously when I see you, you're wearing the primary brand, but do you do anything different as a fan when they're playing as the Wieners instead of the dogs?
Not necessarily. I'll always wear the Wieners jersey. It's just this beautiful gold, it's like a mustard gold, I guess. So it's just a gorgeous jersey. So I love wearing that. And that's only on Wednesday nights though. So every Wednesday home game. But I'll wear my yellow sneakers and with the yellow jerseys.
Awesome.
And then for the home games, it's just kind of a mix of whatever.
So was this fandom, you said you weren't necessarily a huge sports fan, but obviously, Chicago has two major league teams already. Mm-hmm. Did you have a rooting interest in the major league teams, or did your interest in baseball surface after the arrival of the dogs?
Yeah, it's after the dogs. I mean, I've always liked the Cubs, and I rooted for the Sox when they were in the series. But I've never been a crazy baseball guy. I'm casual. Yeah, go Cubs, go Sox. But something snapped in me with the dogs, and I was like, I got to be here. I just love it here.
Well, so your Twitter presence, you do some videos, you do a lot of, pretty much exclusively Chicago Dogs content there. Where can people follow you? What can they expect to find when they come find you on Twitter?
Oh, on Twitter, it's Shy Dog Fool, ChidogFool, Shy Dog Fool at Twitter. I just tweet out mostly dog stuff. For Dogcember, I did a hat a day during the month of December, highlighting my collection here. I'm certainly no, Pat or Calibration or any of these big hack or Ed.
How many dogs hats do you have?
Right now, about 32.
So there are actually 32 different Chicago Dogs hats.
There are many more, actually. They have an abundance of hat designs. And even this year, they came out with at least 15 new ones.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. This has been fun. And we'll hope to catch up with you at a Dogs game.
I see what you did there.
I'm leaving all of this laughter in. That is way more laughter than that joke deserves.
Oh, that's funny. I gotta use that one.
Oh man.
I'm sorry, Paul.
That's okay. For the listener, Mike is still laughing here. That is, like I said, way more laughter than that joke deserved. But Mike, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll see it again.
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate it. I love the show.
Oh, thank you. All right, everyone, welcome back. Last week, we introduced Studio Simon Stumpers, where noted designer, prolific graphic designer Dan Simon brings a trivia question relative to the subject matter of each week's episode. This week, we're talking about the Chicago Dogs. I'm 0-1 right now in my Studio Simon Stumpers, my minor league baseball trivia questions. I got last week's wrong. I'm going to try to redeem myself this week. We're talking about the Chicago Dogs, the independent Chicago Dogs, who sometimes play as the Chicago Wieners. And I trust that you have a trivia question, has something to do with encased meat or the city of Chicago's flag, or I don't know. We'll see what this is. This whole thing makes me very nervous. I am grateful that they're multiple choice because, like you said last week, it kind of gives me a chance.
Okay, well, let's see how you do this time. Just like in baseball, if you don't get a hit your first time up, put that behind you, because there's always, well, I shouldn't say always, but there's often another at bat, and you can't think about how you did the last at bat.
That's
you
true.
Need to be present. So here we go.
I gotta get that last week out of my head here. I gotta come up with a fresh approach at this at bat.
Okay. When a hot dog is ordered Chicago style, is it referred to as being A, dressed to the nines, B, dragged through the garden, or C, stuffed to the gills? Here, let me read that again. When a hot dog is ordered Chicago style, is it referred to as being A, dressed to the nines, B, dragged through the garden, or C, stuffed to the gills?
Okay. So my answer is going to be B. It's going to be dragged through the garden, and I'll tell you why. Dressed to the nines is a different expression. Dressed to the nines means you're super dressed up and ready for a night out on the town. And stuffed to the gills to me means you're over full at the Las Vegas buffet, because as you know, the buffet, it's not all you care to eat, it's all you can eat, and then you're stuffed to the gills. So I'm going to say dragged through the garden, because they're throwing a bunch of vegetables on there. It's tomatoes and peppers and pickles and onions. So B, final answer, dragged through the garden.
Okay, Paul Caputo is now batting 500.
Woo!
You are correct. And your thinking is also correct, although I will assert that the other two do make sense. Dressed to the nines, you are correct. It means you're dressed fabulously for an event or something. But when you put things on food, you are indeed dressing it, like salad dressing. That's where the word dressing comes from. And with all those ingredients that go on a Chicago dog, you could argue it's dressed to the nines. It's all dressed up. So, and then also stuffed to the gills. There's a lot of ingredients that go on a Chicago dog. And it does mean stuffed to the gills does mean you're stuffed, you're full, overly full. But think about a Chicago dog. It's kind of really filled with a lot of stuff.
A lot of vegetables.
Specifically when making a Chicago dog, you start with a boiled all beef hot dog on a poppy seed bun, and then it is quote unquote dragged through the garden, meaning that one then adds the following 7 toppings, always put on in this order. And it's interesting that it has to be done in order. I don't know why, but I didn't make up the rules. I just follow them. First is yellow mustard. Second, sweet green pickle relish. Third is chopped onion. Fourth, 4 tomato wedges. Has to be 4.
4.
5, a dill pickle spear. 6, 2 sports peppers. They're actually called sports peppers.
We had this conversation already on the episode about sports peppers. This was a brand new thing for me.
Okay, and then last and certainly not least is a dash of celery salt. So there you go, the story of how to properly dress or drag through the garden a Chicago dog.
This is a record-breaking 5th segment on this episode of Baseball by Design. So Dan, thank you so much again. This is fun. I'm a huge fan of the Studio Simon Stumpers. I look forward to the next time you come on at the end of an episode to talk about that team's brand.
Okay, well, I'm thrilled that I was part of history as the first time being part of the first time 5th segment of the Baseball by Design podcast. And maybe we'll make history another time in the future in some other way that's even more exciting than this very exciting happenstance.
Though this was very exciting. Dan, thank you. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.